Hello, leaders of the world. Welcome to Spread Love in Organizations, a podcast for purpose-driven healthcare leaders striving to make life better around the world by leading their teams with genuine care, servant leadership, and love. I'm Naji, your host for this podcast, joined today by Andrew Bunton, Vice President of Omnichannel Customer Experience at CVS Health. Andrew leads the efforts to create a differentiated, frictionless pharmacy experience, leveraging CVS digital and physical assets. He has worked at CVS Health for 10 years, including leading the retail pharmacies development, management of clinical services, retail health services strategy, and new product development. Prior to CVS, Andrew worked at Bain & Company and also as Vice President in the Corporate and Investment Banking Group at Bank of America. Andrew, I am so excited and honored to have you with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Nishi. I'm excited about this.
First, I would love to hear your personal story. What's in between the lines of your journey from purely business to banking and now leading in the healthcare industry?
Yeah, I've always been driven by wanting to make an impact, and it's interesting because I think even when I was in college, flirted with maybe going into ministry and kind of thought some about that, but ended up seeing that was not my calling. But then had an experience at the Talk Business Bridge program that kind of opened my eyes to just how invigorating and exciting the business world really was, and that's what kind of lit my fire and desire for going into business. But along the way, had always been looking for how can I make sure I'm making as big an impact as possible, through business, and that's really what's brought me to focus on the healthcare space, where I feel like I can kind of give back using the talents that I have, leadership, analytic capability, strategy, toolkit, but make a difference for folks, and so that's really been part of that journey.
You definitely are doing a huge difference leading such a large organization with CVS Health, and specifically you're leading, and you talked a little bit about it, data analytics, omnichannel. We hear a lot about omnichannel. All of us in healthcare want to get and become an omnichannel company. So you're leading those efforts. Can you tell me a little bit your definition of what omnichannel means?
Yeah, at the end of the day, for us, it's really, how do we meet our customers where they're at? And if a patient really wants to get their medications delivered, at home, making that as easy as possible. If they want to come into the pharmacy, that's great as well. But how do we take a lot of the friction that's historically existed within the pharmacy industry, out and really, give the patient more power, right at their fingertips to control their medication and their overall, health regimen. It's interesting in healthcare, so much comes down to the little micro barriers in terms of taking the right steps. And so what we've seen is if we can really focus on making things as easy as possible, you remove a lot of those micro barriers and really help patients to stay on their medication therapies and live healthier, more active lives.
So when you started this transformation or this journey around omnichannel, I imagine those are large changes for the teams, especially when you have physical retail stores and now moving into digital. We face the same in the corporate world with pharma, obviously. What is the key capability in your leadership style, in the way you led those teams to be able to deliver on the omnichannel strategy?
Yeah, I think a lot comes down to really, energizing, exciting the team around, the art of possible. What could actually be, delivered at the end of the day if we really get this right. And so a lot of it's kind of starting with the patient and kind of grounding it in what is the patient looking for? What are some of the pain points that exist for our patients today? and then how can we work to close all of those gaps, and getting folks excited about a world in which we really could deliver a frictionless pharmacy experience. And then as we go, it's great to have some quick wins to really start to energize folks and get folks excited about what is possible, as we also work on some things that take a little bit longer, and are going to require more persistence to chase after.
I love it. The art of possible. And you share starting with the patients, and you said in the beginning you're a purpose-driven leader, and this is what made you come to healthcare also. So how do you make sure that the patient is alive when you're leading large organizations for your teams? Many times we get into our operational things, into our the weed of what we need to deliver, like the website, how it's looking, what we need to do a little bit more, a little bit less, and we forget that actually at the end of the day we are helping a patient live better. Do you have any tips for leaders in healthcare on how to make sure that the patient is alive, whatever we are doing in our work daily?
It's a great question, and I think that there's a lot of things that can be done. Of course, it starts with grounding it in the consumer research and kind of keeping that front and center. Like, what are the jobs to be done? What are the real things that we need to be working on? But one thing that's really helped us along the way is making sure that we have some design thinking, experts who are in charge of really monitoring and tracking the overall customer experience as we go. What sometimes can happen is when you have folks who are pushing on certain features or certain innovations, that might be a great success, but it might conflict with something else that's being worked on. So at the end of the day, making sure that there's some folks who are really tracking the overall customer experience and how everything is kind of coming together at once. And then as we go, really, testing out innovations on patients. And so not working all the way until something is fully developed and then launching it and seeing what happens. Instead, exposing customers to prototypes, and really getting their feedback, and would they use it, and what do they like about it, what don't they like about it, et cetera, to make sure that we're kind of staying grounded in really what are our patients looking for and what's going to resonate with them.
I love that you're talking really about those iteration and innovation, that you can go fast with, like MVP and test and improve. I'm interested to know how in a large organization you manage to push those ideas in, and more from a leadership standpoint, right? It's because usually I'm feeling the larger the organization is, the less nimble sometimes it becomes. So how did you manage to get this culture or mindset in your team?
Yeah, I love continuous improvement. I love thinking about kind of iterative design. And at the end of the day, I mean, I think the nice thing with it is it really aligns incentives as well. If you, it's very difficult to fund something when you don't have a proven business case. But if you can go test something out, even if it's in a very scrappy manner, and show that patients are really interested, and show some of the potential benefits that can come from it, then it becomes much easier to kind of gain the capital, the operating expense that you're looking for to actually fund something. So what's nice is it's actually kind of aligned with doing kind of quick snap tests, doing mini tests to then build out a business case, while you're also making sure that it's grounded in the customer and what they're looking for, and then keeping the team focused on that. And what I found is generally teams love to test. It's really invigorating. I mean, it's fun to be on the front lines, actually executing something at a super small scale. So I found actually teams generally embrace that and would prefer to test things. And then of course the solution is so much better for having done it anyway.
I want to look a little bit the last 2 years. I imagine the challenges for you has been even bigger than the normal transformation that you were leading, like having to immediately move into practically digital, the vaccine, the platform, all that you have done with appointments, scheduling. I just, like, being a customer, I imagine all that you had to deal with at a national level to make this happen. How did you really reinvent those things and be able to serve patients more your personal experience, I would say, as a leader, to make sure that your teams are delivering? I'm really interested in how you led them towards this.
Yeah. First, I would just say, I think the real heroes at the end of the day are, our pharmacists, our technicians, our front store staff that were kind of on the front lines, throughout the COVID pandemic, because they were the ones who actually, stood up so many of the things that we brought to life, whether it was the COVID testing or the COVID vaccine, or providing people access to PPE, and so at the end of the day, they were the true heroes at the end of the day. I think we were challenged. I mean, I think that it was a period of unprecedented transformation, whether it is the ability to really quickly ramp up our delivery capabilities, to make sure in those early days of the pandemic we could deliver patients their prescriptions for those that didn't feel comfortable coming in to pick it up. Making sure that we were sending out new kind of cleaning protocol and things like that. Changing our hours of operation to make sure that we were reflecting the needs of the community, standing up the testing and vaccine. I think at the end of the day, a lot of it came to really making sure that for our colleagues, for our teams, we were keeping front and center the real purpose behind it all. You would think that was easy to do in the pandemic, but sometimes it can be challenging when folks are working really long hours and having to invest so much. But at the end of the day, really constant reminders and celebrations of just the magnitude of the purpose of the work and where it was all heading toward.
Sure, thank you for that. And definitely, we celebrated them in the beginning of the pandemic, and we should never forget to celebrate all the frontline workers, pharmacists, physicians, technicians, all of those, all the time. Looking back at those experiences, would you have done something different when you look back at this? And what is the one thing that you want to make sure that you're going to keep on doing moving forward?
I think one thing that it's definitely opened my eyes to is kind of the importance of work-life balance. And of course, we all talk about that a great deal, but I think it helped reinforce for me, the import of you can't just talk about it. You need to be very mindful. You need to be watching out for colleagues that to make sure that there is no burnout, and being much more kind of proactive in kind of managing through it. Because I would say, it was a challenge. It was a challenge throughout the period, just where I think throughout the pandemic, at every turn, you'd think like, okay, we're going to push through this for the next month, and then it's going to be better. But then it would be another twist and turn, within the pandemic, as we went. So it ended up being a long time running for a lot of folks, and I think that's the piece that it kind of helped open my eyes to, is just the importance of being much more proactive and having a lot of dialogue with our colleagues in terms of how they're feeling, how they're managing, and encouraging folks to take time off. It was also in a period, you'll remember, where a lot of folks weren't taking vacation because they're used to vacation being someplace that you travel to, and so in the pandemic that wasn't happening. But making sure that folks are even taking staycations and things like that, I think that's definitely been much more of a priority for me, and it was a big learning coming through the experience.
Are you able to maintain this now moving forward? Because it's definitely something that we've seen in all organizations, and a lot of organizations talked about wellness, talked about life-work balance. But now, after 2 years being in the pandemic, we see those kind of waning down, and now it's yeah, it's work-life balance, but maybe not as we expected it or as we said about it. Like, how are you making sure that this is truly now embedded, since that was one of the big learnings for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the things that I've worked on and tried to do is having, the shadow of a leader. I mean, a lot of it starts for your team. It all starts with you as a leader, and so making sure that I'm practicing the things that the things that I preach, and so taking PTO, being okay with kind of stopping work at 5:30 in the evening when I can, like the things like that. I actually had an experience with someone on my team who I respect greatly, who gave me the feedback on, I know that you're sincere about work-life balance, but if you stay at work until 6:30 every night, then everyone else is going to stay at work until 6:30 as well. And so, being mindful of the actions that you take as a leader, and also having, like I mentioned before, proactive conversations with folks and making sure that where you see a little smoke, where you think that they're perhaps working too hard, how can you do something about that?
I love it, leading by example, and yeah, actually kind of walking the talk. This is really crucial. Uh, I will now give you one word, and I would love to get your reaction to this word. The first word is leadership.
Hmm. Um, I'd say servant leadership. For me, it is how can you as a leader really empower your colleagues, invest in them. Something I'm passionate about is like really making sure that you have an eye on what's important for the colleague. Really, what are they working toward? Where do they want to get in their career? What is it that really drives them? So that then you can be structuring the work, around that, and making sure that at the end of the day, it's not just the output, it's the journey as well, and that they're gaining from that journey.
What about innovation?
Oh, I'd say mini test. I mentioned it before. I love to test out new concepts, challenge the status quo. I'd also say diversity. Diversity brings innovation to it, and so I always strive to have a diverse team, and that of course means racial, ethnic diversity, but also like diversity of background as well. We've had a lot of success in kind of having our teams be comprised not just of folks who have MBAs, say, but also we have pharmacists on the team, technicians on the team, people from more of a public health background, kind of all collaborating together to bring innovations to the world.
Can I double click on this one? Well, you know about it, right? Like diversity comes inclusion, especially when you're talking about a lot of diverse backgrounds and diverse thoughts and innovation. How are you making sure in a large organization this is actually happening? And those who have a totally different experience, a different lens towards things, their ideas are being heard and acted upon.
It's a great question, and something that you do have to be really, really mindful of in terms of how are we, and it's interesting. It's not with that. It also brings into account like diversity of personalities, and so a lot of times like how are we making sure that we are pulling insights out of folks who might be more introverted or and making sure it's not just the extroverts who are kind of dominating the conversation as well. Um, at the end of the day, a lot of it is again getting to making sure that you're setting that right culture in that it is one where everybody's voice can and should be heard. It's making sure people feel safe and feel that sense of belonging too. I often refer to it as kind of a work family. That at the end of the day we're a work family. Like how everyone plays a role as part of that family, and everyone belongs. And then hopefully that's kind of empowering folks to be confident in kind of having their message heard.
The third word is customer experience. As a marketer, I had to ask you your lens on this.
Yeah, customer experience. I guess I'll say feedback channels. Like, what are all of the ways in which we are truly listening for what that customer experience is? And so that's something that's definitely been, I've learned a lot through time, and that you have to have a lot of different listening channels. And so, whether it's how are we making sure that we're getting great customer feedback in as near real time as possible? How are we making sure that we're listening to what our frontline colleagues have to say and kind of taking their recommendations and hearing from them how we can help them better serve our customers as well. How are we doing a lot of consumer research, making sure that we're staying ahead of not just like what's the feedback on what we have now, but what else are our patients looking for? How else can we really be helping them as we go?
The last one is spread love in organizations.
Yeah, I'm passionate. I'm passionate about spreading love. I mentioned before that at one point I had thought about even going into the ministry. I think for me, what I've kind of realized is that you can minister in most any role that you are in. And so for me, it is how do I make sure that whether it's peers, whether it's leaders, whether it's my team, that I'm treating people as people first, and as colleagues second, and really investing in people. And sometimes it takes forms in the smallest things. Like I'd say, even though I lead a large team, it's important to me that I have touch bases with everyone on the team at least on some periodic basis, to make sure I'm really getting to know folks and kind of hearing from them, what they're looking for in their career, and kind of and engaging in kind of that level of dialogue. So yeah, I hope that I'm bringing love to CVS and other places that I work every day.
I love that. Any final word of wisdom, Andrew, for healthcare leaders around the world?
What I always tell people is find your passion. Find your passion. And I think what I've been impressed by is if you find your passion, you can identify it. In most any role, you can start steering more and more of your day toward that passion. And if you find your passion, then chances are you're going to be working alongside people who share a very similar passion, and that's what helps with kind of bringing together that work family, because you're together, driving toward big audacious goals together. Thank you so much again for being with me today, Andrew. Yeah, this has been great, Naji. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you all for listening to Spread Love in Organizations podcast. Drop us a review on your preferred podcast platform. Connect with us on SpreadLoveIO.com or LinkedIn. Most importantly, spread love in your organizations and spread the word around you to inspire others and amplify this movement our world so desperately needs.